Rachel Giberman, a seasoned true crime producer whose career is a testament to her unwavering commitment to justice and compassion. Rachel's true crime journey began as a hotline agent for America's Most Wanted, where she managed anonymous tips, a role that was crucial to the success of the series. Handling these tips put Rachel at the center of the action, connecting law enforcement with vital leads while gaining a deep understanding of the human side of crime. She later went on to field produce for In Pursuit with John Walsh, spending over a decade alongside the Walsh family to bring attention to unsolved cases and help bring perpetrators to justice. Throughout her career, Rachel has produced numerous true crime series, but remains especially passionate about bringing unadjudicated cases into the spotlight. Her storytelling is driven by a strong sense of ethics and empathy, making her a respected and impactful voice in the true crime producing world. Through her work, Rachel continues to amplify the voices of those whose stories are too often overlooked. This is True Crime in Hollywood, Rachel's personal tale. All right, listeners, this is an episode that I think I've been waiting to do probably for over 2 years. Let me just be honest, having this conversation with you. So I am sitting down with Rachel Giberman, and this is the person who is responsible for teaching me everything that I needed to know when it comes to ethics and true crime. So first and foremost, hi, Rachel. Welcome to the podcast.
Hi. Oh my gosh, thank you for that. That's really
Yeah,
kind. I appreciate that.
We'll dive more into that as we go, but just right off the top, where did you grow up and what inspired you to pursue storytelling?
So I grew up in Maryland, and I actually was like thinking that I wanted to be an interior designer at first.
Oh,
Yeah, it was weird until I realized like it's not just about like swatches and stuff. You actually need to know math, and I'm horrible at that. So TV kind of came up, but not like really understanding it, obviously, until you're like actually in it.
yeah,
Yeah, so in college, I like kind of pivoted
yeah.
and I went to school, Salisbury University, and did journalism instead, just thinking like I am more of like a creative brain. So I feel
Yeah.
like storytelling was more my niche, in a way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's
Yeah.
amazing. Oh, I love that. But what a transition.
Yes. So like polar opposite from, you know, interior design to like this. Yeah, it's
Yeah,
weird. Yeah.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Now, correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe you got your start in the industry with the Today Show. Is that
I
correct?
did. I
Yeah,
did.
okay. Can you tell me more about that opportunity and how it came about and your biggest takeaways from that job?
Yeah, that came about as a lucky, amazing accident, to be honest. I graduated, nobody would, you know how it is. It's like
Yeah.
they always say you have to have like 3 to 5 years experience, and it's like, well, let me in. Nobody
Yeah.
would be in. I saw a position on for the Today Show, and it was like we're looking for graduates, and like this is probably going to embarrass myself on the podcast, but I was like, oh, I'm a graduate. What they meant was like graduate school students, but I was
I
like,
love it.
I'm a graduate, so I applied to be an intern, and they
Wow.
literally hired me to be an intern. Then it's time to go do my paperwork in HR, and this is all in the DC bureau. And I go and do my paperwork. My boss is like, "Okay, you did it." I'm like, "Yeah." The only section that I left blank was the school stuff because I graduated, so I don't have any credits. And then all of a sudden they were like, "Oh my God, like we didn't realize that you were not in graduate school. So you have to leave in 2 weeks. Like we can't keep you here." And it was for Willard Scott for
Oh
the
my gosh.
100-year-old birthday segment. So it was like for that, the Smuckers. I don't know if you're familiar with
Yeah,
like,
I remember that. Uh-huh.
and so I was devastated, like literally sobbing because I was like, I just finally got in at NBC at that. And they were like, since it's our bad, we'll give you 2 weeks to shadow, but then like you got to go.
Yeah.
And in my second week, like Willard Scott himself was like, this is crazy. Like, let's keep her as a PA. She can open mail. She can like get me coffee. Like, why?
Oh my gosh.
And literally that was the ticket to me. I was going to have to leave, and I started as a PA for him. And then, the rest is history.
Holy moly. What a
Yeah.
story.
Yeah.
I never even knew that.
Yeah.
That is incredible. People
Yeah.
will love that. Oh my
It's
goodness.
pretty
S-
wild. Yeah.
Yeah. So from there, then what sparked the interest in the true crime genre and drew you to this particular field?
Yeah, so I had been working for Willard for like 3 years, and um on Craigslist, that's how old I am. They would post TV jobs on there.
Wow.
And I kind of started like love him to death. He passed, so rest in peace to him. He's a wonderful man, but he's also older, and I
Mhm.
was so young. He had already lived this legacy of doing so much in this business that I felt like I needed to do more.
Yeah.
Like he wasn't doing, any beats outside of, like, he wasn't doing the Thanksgiving Day parade anymore, and he wasn't going
Mhm.
to New York to be with, Al Roker and everyone again. So I was like, I feel bad, but I need more. I had always been invested in true crime stories. It started with like JonBenet Ramsey's murder,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
and that really like took me. Then it was Lacey Peterson's murder, and that really invested me. And on Craigslist, I saw a job for America's Most Wanted, and I was like, that is like the mecca of, you cannot ask for anything better than that. Like,
Yep.
you just can't. And that's where, I applied to work at the hotline. So at first I was able to stay at NBC and then just work show nights on America's Most Wanted, being like a PA, answering phones and stuff on the hotline. And then they had an opening, so I left Willard and chose to go to America's Most Wanted full time, and realized like you cannot compare the feeling. Like NBC was great, Today's Show's great, Willard's the best, but like when you're saving lives, when you're working with people who turned like the biggest pain into the biggest gift to
Yeah.
people who are victims of crime, who need answers, and like there's nothing more fulfilling than that. So I made a tough decision, because I love Willard to death, but I made the decision to jump. Yeah.
Wow. Yeah.
Yeah.
My
Yeah.
goodness. So
Yeah.
I want to take a moment though and talk about the Walsh family because you have been working with them, give or take like 15 years or
Yeah.
so. Oh.
Yeah.
So what were those early days like, and especially working alongside Callahan during those pivotal initial years?
Yeah, like I smile just like talking about Cal and the family. It's like I remember being like pounding on doors in the office, being like, "Can I please come to a field shoot with John? Like, I just want to see him like in the flesh, doing it in the flesh." And Cal was like this young genius, like, always knowing that eventually like he would take over for his dad, at least in my head, I imagine that. But
Yeah.
it's like the ability to see how much they are really about that life. Like they
Yes.
are the real, everyone always asks me that. They're like, are they really, is he really?
Mhm.
They are so dedicated and so committed. And like, I mean, when you talk about who taught me the ethics of how to be like empathetic, sympathetic towards like victims of crime, I learned it from them. Like they are just some of the best humans that have ever existed when it comes to like doing the right thing in this industry, outside of the stuff that they've done when it doesn't come to the industry, just with
Yeah.
laws and stuff. But within this industry, like they are the mecca of like what everyone should be like and how they treat people. So I
1000%.
have a lot of like their thing is, being good to the victims and being advocates and making television later. And
Yeah.
that's how I've like adopted that mentality in everything I do. Like as long as, you're there for them, then the rest is secondary, kind of.
Yeah. Amen to all of that.
Yeah.
But before we talk more about In Pursuit, because I will get there, but
Yeah.
after America's Most Wanted and your time there, you then kept going the true crime genre for years, starting, as an associate producer, you then moved to senior AP, but then eventually turning that into field producing. So what was that transition like, and how did that job affect you personally?
It was for a while, it affected me personally because I felt like I couldn't understand how I couldn't get ahead. It took a while to get that field producer credit.
Yeah.
And for a while, like I couldn't really understand how that I would work with people who didn't see the victims like I would, but then they were
Hmm.
advancing so far in this industry, so far ahead of me. And it's not like a competition necessarily, but when you're trying to like get to a place where you can sit down and interview these people yourself instead of being like the one who's doing the logistics and things, it does become like sort of a race to be able to do that. But, I think hearing those like stories of what people went through really like makes your world look different. All of a sudden, like it's not like you minimize your own problems or anything, but you just realize like things could be a lot worse.
Yeah.
Um, I wanted that full view of like not just from the victim side, but I also felt like I needed to get into like the criminal mentality.
Yeah.
So I did jail shows where I would like talk to inmates and really like understand how they could do something like whatever they were convicted for. I did serial killer shows to understand, best,
Yeah.
obviously, but just to understand like what could get someone to go to that extreme, because I feel like you have to know that side of it too, or have an
Mhm.
interest in that side of it to be able to know how to approach, victims who have either been a victim to them, have lost
Mhm.
a person to them or people to them, and it all would be able to just make me a better producer whenever I would get that role.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you for sharing all of that. And that is pretty nuanced, but you're right. Like you do want to know both sides of the coin,
Yeah.
essentially, to be able to fully, I think, immerse yourself in that kind of storytelling too. So thank you for sharing that. Now, our worlds would eventually collide on one of Melojo Productions series that was on Oxygen, which was Exhumed. Um, I just have to share with you, though, I was
Yeah.
so intimidated by you on that because you came with a wealth of knowledge, first of all, but equally, you were doing your job so well. So, with that being said, I want to talk about Exhumed a little bit because this was a series that focused on exhumations, and some of these stories were so extreme in terms of the police work, but also the trauma behind it. Since you did the two seasons of this series, what was that experience like being in the field first and then transitioning to supervising producer?
Well, thank you for that. I mean, I was
That's the truth.
intimidated. No, I mean, I was intimidated too. They're like, there's a girl on the show who has a podcast. I was like, what?
Oh,
Like, so same here, girl, same here. But yeah, I mean, I chose to do the show because that was a knowledge also that I had. I didn't know anything about
yeah.
exhumations.
Yeah.
And I thought that it would be a good tool because there's so many people who, back when I was working on America's Most Wanted, there were people who were sending letters being like, my son, my daughter, they did not die this way. I know that something else happened to them. I know that this person killed them, so on and so forth, but it was ruled a suicide, this, that. And I remembered that. And so I felt like doing Exhumed would be like, how can we share with the public that like if there is enough reasonable doubt that you can ultimately, like it's like Cal says, justice might be delayed but not denied,
Yeah.
and get that exhumation process. And it was hard because you're talking to, I remember like interviewing some of the medical examiners who were just so matter of fact about,
Yeah.
like the deceased people and children and things that they were working on, and it's like your brain almost explodes at how matter of fact they can be in talking
Yeah.
about it. But it was necessary, and I think it was a great collab because you're talking to family members who are like, yeah, we want to talk about this so other people know that they have this tool too to be able to,
Yeah.
to do that. Um, I think the big difference, it almost felt like a linear move in that I was doing a lot of the supervising producer work, but still being a field producer or senior producer, whatever I was that first season. And then by the second season, I was like booking the stories,
Yeah.
writing the pitches. And so taking it from like soup to nuts, I think allowed for the investment to be greater because then I feel like you really like own it. Like you're there
Yeah.
in the beginning. You're talking to the families before anyone else. You're like, you've done it. You
Yep.
know how that
Yep.
feels. And
Yeah.
it changes things because instead of it being handed off from someone else, who booked it, then they hand it to you, you're like holding hands with the family members every step of the way. And that's a game changer.
Yeah. Yeah.
That was a great experience. Yeah.
Yeah. And you're touching on something that I would love to also highlight because being a booking producer, there
Mhm.
is this foundation of trust that
Yeah.
happens. Can you talk to me a little bit about that?
Yeah. I mean, I think that's everything. Like,
Yeah.
I'm not going to convince someone to do something that they don't want to do, to answer something that they don't want to say. And I think that, and you as being like a survivor, what that feels like. I'm not one of those people that's going to bang down your door,
Yeah.
pound your phone. I think that that's part of like why, understandably so, we get such a bad rap is that more people are just like aiming for the tears, want to make
Mhm.
like faking it till you make it just to get them to do the show. And but I'm not saying that this is everyone by any means. So please make
Yeah.
sure that,
Yeah.
but it is just, it kind of leaves you with that bad taste of like people have this idea that when you enter this field, it's you only want to glamorize people's pain,
Mhm.
but that you don't want to establish the trust and mean what you say and be genuine and come from a good place. And I think that that is part of going back to one of your other questions about being an associate producer. I think that the longer that I was an associate producer, it allowed me to learn the skills to gain trust from other
Yeah.
people, which is critical. That's why, like, a lot of times when I'm interviewing them now, the trust is there so much that like sometimes we're crying together when I'm asking the question.
Exactly.
Sometimes,
Yeah.
'cause it's just
Yeah.
like you gain that deeper connection with them. By the time they're done, they feel like it's a therapy session instead of like this, pushy interview that makes them feel uncomfortable, like they're reliving the worst day of their life, the worst thing that's
Exactly.
ever happened to them.
Yeah.
And you have to handle that with trust and grace. And, that's all part of it for sure.
Mm, love that. Thank you.
Yeah.
All right, so I'm going to go back a little bit and talk about the moment you contacted me to join the rest of the In Pursuit team because one, I thought it was a joke. I really was like, is this really happening? And then I realized, oh wait, no, this is a serious thing that she's presenting to me. But two, like I said, it was almost as if you knew I needed this experience when it comes to working with trauma survivors. So first, thank you. Thank you for that opportunity and for even considering me. Truly, like that was just the most magical call that I've probably had in this industry. So,
Thank you. Thanks for
uh,
being, dedicated to the cause,
of
it's important.
course.
Yeah.
Of course. And so you already built this rapport though with the field team.
Mhm.
And again, working alongside Cal, but you created this like rock solid team. Okay, I just have to throw that out there. So what were the previous seasons like before I got there?
Oh man. I mean, the rock solid team was always, I think we became, by the time you got there, I think we turned into more of like a family team.
Yeah.
I think what helps is we all have the same mindset. So
Yeah.
the camera to the audio to the makeup to the PA, like no one takes this as just like a random paycheck crime show,
Mhm.
which is so rare. Like not, a lot of times you get on a show and understandably it's like it's a job, right? At the end
Yeah.
of the day, people are
Yep.
working to get a paycheck to make money, but this is like you're able to see it beyond the check, which
Mhm.
so I think that that bonded us a lot
Yeah.
more than what I ever imagined. I think a lot of that had to do with like Cal's energy and just being a part of the team instead of like seeing him as, John Walsh's son or as a co-host of the show. Like it was like just a well-oiled machine of us all working together. Um, I think the stories got harder as far as emotion and like extreme, I can't believe that this happens to people level
Yeah.
of story. And I think that, so instead of just when the camera's rolling and then, all of a sudden the camera cuts and we're still talking about it. Like
Yeah.
when we go to dinner, we're still talking about it the next morning when we load into the van.
Yep.
It consumed us more as years went on, especially for the crew. Like, I'm one of it's the same camera crew,
Yeah.
in each producer team, but I would get weeks of like, okay, go back, prep for the next one. These guys are just like on
Going.
the road hearing all this stuff all the time, and
Yeah.
they are visually having to pay attention to this. They're hearing this.
Yeah.
They're the real MVPs, 100%. Yeah.
Yeah. Which is why I wanted Benj on the show because he did it in a way that like I haven't seen DPs do before. And it was the same engagement and understanding the assignments
Yeah.
and wholeheartedly. So that truly was just remarkable to see. But
Yeah.
as I shared in my first episode, I said that In Pursuit was my masterclass in ethics and true crime. So, up until that point, I hadn't seen certain protocols being implemented on other sets, but one that stuck out to me was ensuring just every trauma survivor, their needs were met first. And you always made sure of that. So, number one, thank you for that. But there was a particular episode where we interviewed an SA survivor and you made sure to communicate with them about their comfort level of being mic'd and then ensuring their identity would be concealed. And lastly, offering this bouquet of flowers at the end of that interview, because this was also the very first interview this survivor had ever done in their life. So, how did that process come together for you and essentially knowing their needs comes first?
Oh, wow, that's nice. Thank you. I just feel like in any position, this in particular, like you said, an SA survivor, but if they were not, and it was just someone who was talking about, their mom being murdered, or whatever, the idea of someone coming over who you don't know, touching you,
Mhm.
putting a microphone in your shirt, like nobody would want, even if you were like going on a food show, I feel like it's
Yeah.
like hot, like,
Yeah.
and so I think that's one of the things that I try and do is I put myself in their shoes. I don't even like being mic'd, and I've
Yeah.
been mic'd before and I'm in this business and I know the person who's mic'ing me and I know who, so it's
Yeah.
like what that must feel like for someone who is a survivor is
Yeah.
like no. And also I just feel like it's important to always have both genders on set, right? Like
Yeah.
some males need females around and some females need males around, vice versa. So I think that that's super important to not have an all male crew with a female,
Yeah.
survivor to not,
Yeah.
and vice versa too, because we know that that exists. I think that I also just take the reputation of what the Walshes have built so seriously that I would hate for a person to come onto the show and have this experience where they feel uncomfortable in any way, or they feel like we were just trying to get the story and bye, you can go now. Like
Yeah.
I don't want anyone to feel that way. And I wouldn't want to feel that way if, God forbid, this was me talking about any, something that I had gone through. So, I adapted that mentality. And I think in the end, it makes for better storytelling because that's the trust right there. That
Mhm.
really is the key is when you can put yourself in their shoes and really like feel what would they feel like? What would they want? What would they need? What do they
Yeah.
hear? Whatever. And the flower thing, I think that started back in my first season on the show. I just personally, like in my real life, flowers are just, it always makes me cry if I get them. I love looking at them, smelling them. I love like waking up, being reminded that they exist in my kitchen, whatever. And so I just started, I was like, why not? Like
Yeah.
nobody would ever expect that. And that does not happen to people often on other shows. So it's like, let's just
Nope.
start doing this tradition, making it a mandate where every producer gets on board and does it too, especially with Cal's team. I can't speak
Yeah.
for the other team, but for our team, because, it is the worst thing that's ever happened to them. And there is no guarantee, unfortunately, that our show will fix this for them. There's a high
Correct.
chance that it would, but there are those that are still cold cases where the fugitives are still out there and, want to make sure that they know how much like they're appreciated. And if Flowers can do it even for like 5 minutes, then it became it became worth it.
I appreciate that insight too. The other
Yeah.
thing that Benj and I talked about too was that the different trauma survivors interviewed, because we were also working with children.
Mhm.
Talk to me about that difference of working with the adolescent to adults.
Yeah, that is the hardest. My first time ever interviewing, I interviewed an essay survivor it was actually for NBC, and she was 11. And that was like beyond anything that I can even like explain in words on your podcast, on the
Yeah.
podcast. your it's life-changing to hear a child's innocence being stolen and then needing to navigate that into their adulthood.
Yeah.
Like, I can't imagine what that's like. And it's almost like a different verbiage almost in a way,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
like everything is heightened.
Yeah.
Everything is, this last season of In Pursuit that I did, actually, there was a mother who came in. Her daughters were SA survivors, young kids. One was like 6 years old, I believe, when her essays started, by a family member, nonetheless. And she brought them to the shoot, and they hung out in like one of the other rooms or whatever. And you just like meeting them face to face. They're so innocent. They're
Yeah.
so like, how could this happen? Why did this happen? And I feel like that also helps you with learning what people need, as far as, the people that you're talking to are not always going to be, adults in this industry,
Yeah.
unfortunately. Like,
Yeah.
it is a skill that everyone should have, of like, how do you talk to a child who's gone through something like this? How do you like talk to a parent who feels maybe guilty that they didn't notice the signs of something like that happening? Like,
Yeah.
there's so many levels of depth to like working with survivors. It's like so beyond. And that's why I think this podcast is so important, because it's not so like black and white, do this or
Yeah.
that. It's like so much bigger than that, you know?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And the other thing to hit on too, because we have been doing this for a minute now,
Mhm.
production companies and networks do not want children's stories, usually half the time. They shun away from it. So I think then getting to In Pursuit and knowing that we were going to go and be, talking about especially like sextortion and sex crimes online, like this is very, very prevalent. So that was another component piece that I was just like, I don't really, it took me some time to process through that whole experience. But just as you said, I mean, it is so important that we talk about these things, because I do think those stories are important just as much as the adult versions are, if not more, right? Like to be able to let parents know this is what happens. And so in that transition, we know that Cal does important work outside of the TV world. Just as you said, the Walsh family, they are the real deal and really have taken what they have gone through and put that forth and forward. So, how have you seen, working alongside with them transform this industry? Because I also think they are like, just as you said, they are the mecca. But how do you think that progress has, transitioned over decades now at this point?
Yeah, I mean, I think you just hit on one thing, which is such a good point and so true, is that the stuff that happens to kids, like a lot of the shows don't want to talk about that,
Yeah.
especially certain networks don't want to talk about that. You might see certain things like, the Gabriel Hernandez story
Yeah.
was on Netflix, which was insane to watch, but also so important. And so I think the Walshes opened the door to like, let's not make people think that this can't happen to your kid, because it's just
Mhm.
wrong message to everyone that like, when the whole point is like, that is, I think, a tool to educate, the kids. We did that story in Florida about Sophie Reeder, that's a story I never forget. That was, and we did it twice, and it was about this girl who was what Florida police believe trafficked back when she was 15, and she ran away from home, and it all started with a digital footprint of her computer and talking
Yeah.
to, people online. And I feel like it's almost like working for the Walshes and working on their type of content, which is all real stories, raw stories, unsolved, in a sense that the fugitive still wanted, or whatever happened to this missing child or person is still unknown. I feel like that opened the door for people to do stories that are not fully adjudicated, because that's,
Yeah.
how it is. That's
That's
all.
another one.
Yeah.
Mhm.
I mean, I feel like the whole world should be doing unadjudicated cases, because that's what the survivors need.
Yeah.
It's like, so a lot of these shows are just doing the stories where there might be some mystery in it, but then the ending. Whereas these are like giving people the tools to do the right thing, to
Yeah.
make the call, to trust someone, to know that you can be anonymous.
Yeah.
They are, I feel like, America's Most Wanted was, set the tone for like, when he says you can be anonymous, you really can. A lot of
Yeah.
people, especially, we know there's been so many issues with police brutality and things that are going on, as far as like the human rights and trust,
Yeah.
feeling safe to open your door to a police officer, and with America's Most Wanted, with the Walshes, it allows you to really be like, oh my gosh, and I'm speaking as someone who worked on the hotline. Trust me,
Yeah.
that would disconnect, and I'd be like, no, because I can't call
Ugh.
back. There's no way. It really
That's
is
right.
anonymous. And so
Um,
it gave, I think, the world a place to trust. You don't feel comfortable calling the police? Well, you have the next best thing,
yeah.
And so I think that is also what the world needs, and much, much different as well, for people to know that they can rely on that too as a way to get justice.
That gave me chills. Can we also just talk about, do you remember those first captures that
Yeah.
you were notified of? Can you talk to me about that?
Yeah. Oh my God. The captures are, you get this feeling as like an operator when you're talking to them, to the tipster, you get this feeling like you just know, like your stomach, it's like
Mm,
butterflies or something that's
yeah.
unsettled. And you just know, like you feel different, Then there's other calls where you're like, meh, but you know, you you will never forget that one. And then getting the call that like, yeah, this is him. Then fast forwarding into producing, it was like this joke on In Pursuit that like, my God, I was like the longest running, I've worked at the Walshes for the longest time. Same with like, working on In Pursuit, and every producer was getting a capture from their story. And I was still like sitting here waiting for one for mine. And I was like, that's
Yeah.
so, like, how is this possible? How have I worked on In Pursuit these many seasons and I can't? And then this past season, it happened. And it was,
Ah,
oh my God. It was a story in California about a step grandfather who essayed his grandkids. And the way that the capture happened, the way that the US Marshals, LAPD, like I have to shout them out for it, the collaborative effort, and then the look on his face, like when they captured him and put him in cuffs, was like, yeah, I was like crying. It was,
ah,
I mean, because then it's like, you participated in that. You were a part of that. You weren't the person to make the call necessarily, but like to have like worked with the family, to have, that's the story with the children that I was referring to. Oh
yeah.
my God, like there is no better feeling than that. Like
Yeah.
then you think about all the sleepless nights and hard work and this and that, and you're like, oh my God, hell yeah. Like
Worth it.
nothing feels better than this because that's justice. And it
Yeah.
worked. And it worked
Yeah.
because of like all of us, the team. So,
Hmm.
and the
Mm.
tipster, obviously, but it's that feeling. It's a life-changing. Yeah, it like makes me smile just like talking about. Yeah, it's a life-changing. You'll never feel anything like it. You could work for a million other shows and it'll be a show. And then this, you'll be like, oh my God, I remember, it just gives
Yeah.
you joy. Yeah. Yeah.
Thank you for sharing that. And
Yeah.
congratulations. First of all, I remember that. I totally forgot. Yeah, like you were like, I haven't gotten a capture yet. So, oh, that makes my heart so happy to hear it.
Yeah,
Ugh.
I was so excited. I told Cal, I was like, this is my season, man. Somebody's got to go. Like, somebody. And yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Well, one of the things too about that though is that I think I shared on a different episode, but also would love your insight because we were waiting at at a hotel. We got a conference room for these two US Marshals and we just saw them sitting in their cars. Right? And we're like, are they going to come in anytime soon? Like we're running late, we've got to do dinner. And then we come to find out it's because they are actually hearing real-time reports of the fugitive that we were filming about. Can you talk to me about that? Because that is wild.
Yeah, yeah. That is really things are happening in real time. And that's, I think, another like really cool thing about working on the show is that the hotline is 24/7, 365. People are calling in tips on Christmas, and
Yeah.
there's thankfully, operators who are doing God's work and answering the calls. But yeah, I mean, the marshals were having some activity with that particular case that we were working on simultaneously, to the point where when they did actually sit down with Cal, a lot of it was like, I can't tell you that. I can't tell you that.
Exactly,
You
right? It
know,
changed.
it
It
changed the whole
changed.
course and
Forgot
that
about
was
that.
the final piece of, they are the last act. They are the fugitive
Yeah.
hunters. They are the ones who are like, so where, who, what, why at the very end. So the viewers know, like, okay, if they're drinking, a whiskey that's this brand, it's got to be him.
Yeah.
And it became an I don't know game because it's like, you got to keep those things close to your chest.
Hmm.
We just saw that. I don't know if you're following that with the Delphi case,
Yes. Yeah. Yep. Hmm.
which we did on In Pursuit too. Like, oh my God, so thankful and happy for that family for justice finally,
Yeah.
after all this time. But the police, it was so difficult because the police were like, can't tell you that, can't tell you that, can't tell you that, because
Yeah.
they didn't have a suspect yet. So
Yeah.
it's a lot of you want to protect the investigation
Hmm.
as much as possible because God forbid you're responsible for that crumbling,
Yeah.
that so it's all part of it's a dance of like what we can and can't say, why we can and cannot go there,
Yeah.
and wanting to do the right thing, but also like keeping the investigation intact for the sake of the victims and getting justice in the end. So yeah, that
Hmm.
was wild. I forgot about that.
I
Yeah.
know. But seriously, but I love like sharing this because it really, people don't necessarily think about it because they're just
Yeah.
watching the end product, but
Yeah.
we're giving like that true behind the scenes of it. So
Yeah.
appreciate that.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
now, so something that you and I have talked about though is the quick turnaround times for these types of shows and the rapid speed with working with highly traumatized individuals. What do you hope to see change in this industry when it comes to true crime storytelling, but also the ethics part of it and why that's so integral in this process?
I want networks to take more risks as far as like less exploiting, more awareness, more
Hmm.
change, more things that can get people to do the right thing. People talking, I think, is important to each other and learning about things that like evil is lurking in our
Yeah.
own backyard. Like, trafficking is not just in Mexico and whatever, it's
Hmm.
actually number one here. So it's like there's certain things that I feel like I would love for going back to like the kid thing, like it's hard. It's so painful to hear about, but parents need to hear it. Like the world needs to hear it. So taking risks. Um, one thing that one of my showrunners taught me in this industry that I think is super important, that is hard for me to like still after all these years, like like really understand and be okay with. So I'm still working on it, but it's like you can't always expect people to care like you do,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Um, you know, and I think about you actually too when I say this is like your lens is a survivor lens, which cares on a different caliber that is only something that you in your individual story, but also survivors in general can understand.
Yeah.
Whereas there's other people who are looking at a lens of like, I love camera work and lighting and I love the way that things look. And it's like, that's not, I feel like when you're connected in a different way, your passion for it is different,
Yeah.
So I kind of want in a perfect world, everyone would care a little more beyond.
Yeah.
I'm not saying don't care about the lighting and don't care about the shot and this, that, the third, or telling a producer, don't care about, I don't know, like getting the bites for post and this and that. I'm just saying it more of like recognizing that there's a human element, a struggle, a
Yeah.
sadness, a depravity. Like if it wasn't for them, like we get a paycheck from their story.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
hard. That's a hard thing to wrestle with at the end of. I still have a hard time like stomaching that at
Yeah.
times.
Absolutely.
Um, so I wish that, like we kind of are more careful when it comes to like talking to these people. If you want them to do the show, like I mean, talk to them just like you would talk to a friend. Don't manipulate or, try and tell them things just to get them to do it. Like
Mm-hmm.
put yourself in their shoes, realize like there is no telling, like, and you know this more than anyone, who's to say it won't be you? Like,
Yep.
who's to say it
Yep.
won't be your cousin or your brother or your sister? Like, you just don't know. So operating with that mentality, I think would go a long way. And I think just like recognizing too that you bring people on the show, like even bringing you on the show, you don't really think about like, yeah, one day she might, because I don't know all the stories when I first come on. It's like, I
Yeah.
know and sometimes the stories change because they might be caught before we're going in the field to produce it, so
Mm-hmm.
on. But there's another element that you have to consider too, that there might be people that you're working next to who have to hear things that trigger them, that
Yep.
make them uncomfortable, that make them go back to what happened to them, that make
Yeah.
them, incapable of and to be sensitive to that, you know,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
understand it and respect it. So I think that's part of it too. Sometimes you don't think about like, oh yeah, they're listening to all these. It's like looking in a mirror, and
Yep.
especially with that one episode that you were talking about earlier. So it's just, being more aware that like this isn't just like I'm doing a true crime show, but it's like we're talking about human lives. We're talking about experiences that like literally can never leave people. It
Yeah.
is attached. What happened to you will never go away. You're not going to forget it tomorrow, and
Mm-hmm.
to act accordingly.
Yeah.
Um, I think that would be my perfect world of, I think it's become more of a passion to do the like advocacy part. It's become less about like, I want to make television and more like, I want to help people.
Yeah.
And it's become more of my mission over the years than the other stuff.
Yeah.
So that would be
Agreed.
my hope. Yeah.
You also started transitioning a little bit out of true crime,
Mhm.
and then you started going into the 90-Day Fiancé world. What
Yeah.
was that like? And are there any overlapping themes within the two genres?
That was really cool because look, this content is it is hard to be around people who like even going back to the prison and the jail shows, to work to be around an environment with people who are struggling,
Hmm.
even if they deserve it, is depressing.
Hmm.
And then, just content like In Pursuit, for example, it can be mentally, it's hard.
Yeah.
So switching to 90 Day Fiancé is a bit easier because the stakes are, I'm working with pros because these are all people who have been doing these spin-offs for so long,
Yeah.
the cast
Yeah.
and crew. Um, but the stakes are a bit different. Like it's not like I'm going on the show wanting people to their relationships to fail necessarily,
Yeah.
but I just don't feel as much like with the crime shows, there's so much sensitivity and ownership and like I want to do this right. And I feel with 90 Day Fiance, I'm a mega fan, but I'm also like, if their relationship doesn't work out, I'm not responsible for that, or I don't feel responsible
Yeah.
for that. I'm not
Yeah.
responsible even if, on the other shows either, but I definitely feel more sensitivity. Like if there's no tips that came into the hotline, I'd be like, how could that happen? With 90
Yeah.
Day, if they don't work out, it's unfortunate, but I don't feel that heaviness
You're not
associated.
taking that home.
Yes, I'm not taking that home. Exactly.
Yeah.
And so, but I would say in a lot of ways, like there's certain couples where it's like they already know they are a well-oiled machine. They know exactly what we need and what we're looking for. And then there's other couples where, it is harder to get that out. And I feel like you're dealing with reality television stars, which
Hmm.
is a totally different beast.
Yeah.
I mostly do the tell-alls,
Yeah.
so which in a way is beneficial because that's when you want it to all air out.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's different personalities, different thresholds, different things that um people want to reveal and people want to keep secret.
Yeah.
So not as much of an overlap as what I would
Would
have
say.
expected. Yeah.
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 Ooh, that's
Yeah.
so interesting. Thank you for
Yeah.
that.
Yeah. Yeah, but it's so fun. Like it really is like a fun, and then you're like sitting there being like, oh my God, they really are crazy, or they really are hilarious, or they really are
Yeah.
so in love, and as a fan,
Yeah.
it's pretty cool to watch. So
Oh,
yeah,
I bet. That's
yeah,
awesome.
yeah.
So, final question before we get to know you a little bit better. But what advice would you offer someone who wants to pursue a career in field producing, but equally in the true crime genre?
Just make sure you go into it with the full knowledge of what you're getting yourself into. It's long days, it's long hours, it's sometimes weekends.
Hmm.
It is exhausting at times to like you're mentally listening to someone and staying in tune to what they're saying the whole time. Your brain is like, did I get that? Did they say that? While paying attention to, it's a lot of mental that goes
Yeah.
into the process, and physical too, but mental. And just that if you do want to get into a genre that's more serious, that you come with the like humanity that it takes to do something like that. Like don't come into it just because you like love watching murder shows. I know
Yeah.
that there's a lot of people that do that, and I respect that too, but I think you can get farther in the storytelling where you really realize that it becomes more than just a job for you if you do it the
Mhm.
right way,
Yeah.
and come into it with the right like intentions. So
Yeah.
yeah.
That's great. Love
And
it.
have a thick skin. Oh my God. Yeah.
Yeah,
Have thick.
because you don't know what you're going to hear at the end of the
No,
day. I mean,
no.
especially in booking, when you make that first phone call, you don't know what they're
Yeah.
going to say. And probably also to preface, there is so much missing from an episode, like a 30, 24-minute episode, if you will, and the backstory of that. So knowing that you are going to get a big portion of it that you may not be prepared for. So,
Yeah.
yeah, agreed.
Expect the unexpected. Yeah.
Truly,
Yeah.
truly.
Yeah.
All right, Rachel, here's the fun part. What is the most interesting thing you've read, watched, or listened to recently?
Mm, the most interesting thing that I read. This is so random, but Mike Sorrentino from the Jersey Shore, The
Oh,
Situation.
yeah. Uh-huh.
Okay. I read his book, Reality Check, and it is actually like, I know people are probably going to laugh and judge me for it. I don't blame you guys. It
No.
was actually really like the behind the scenes of his addiction and what he was
Wow.
experiencing on Jersey Shore was actually like really like now when you watch Jersey Shore back in the day, you're like, oh my God, yeah, like um the stories that he told in there were definitely behind the scenes of like one of them was like in the Miami season, like getting drugs from one of the tanning salon owners, like things that,
Wow.
nobody ever knew. And
Ugh,
just seeing like his complete full circle. Um,
yeah.
it was interesting. So that's the most interesting thing that I read.
Wow. I was
Yeah.
not expecting that. And I also didn't even know he wrote a book. So
Yeah,
now
it's
I'm
called Reality
intrigued.
Check. Yeah.
Wow.
It was random. I started reading it over summer at the pool, and then I was like, this will just be a fun read. And then in the end, I was like, wow, this actually is really helpful with people for whether you have addiction or just to see him being able to overcome. Like he really, puts a spotlight on that. So,
Wow.
so that's good. That was good for what I read. I don't remember the name of it, so you're gonna have to help me with this. But
Okay.
on Netflix, there was a Nicole Kidman series that was just out.
Perfect couple.
Perfect
Okay.
Couple.
Yeah.
Um, Insane. Like it is the crazy,
Yeah.
just it's one of those series where just when you think you have it figured out, you don't. And then the next episode comes and you think something else, and then it's like
Oh,
another, yeah. So it's one of those where it leaves you on the edge of your seat. Really, really good. And she's incredible. So yeah, highly, highly recommend.
ooh. Now, local favorites. I
Mhm.
know you're in DC, but you also spend a lot of time in New York. Do you want to do one for each? And this can be a restaurant, store, bookstore, whatever you want.
Okay. My favorite in New York, well, since this is close to the holidays, there's this place called Ralph's. It's
Hmm.
in New York that is Christmas magic. There's like
Mm.
Christmas, people have probably seen it on Instagram, but it's like ornaments like all over the ceiling, hanging down from the ceiling. It was on
Oh,
Sex and the City also.
oh yeah. I was
Yeah.
gonna say, I was like, this sounds like Sex in the City.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Oh,
I mean, that just is like a happy, happy place. Like a feel good place, especially like with the holidays coming up.
yeah.
I miss New York. I miss New York energy, but there's a great spot that is actually in Maryland that I love called Villa Maya because I kind of bounce like Maryland DC border.
Yeah.
Great Mexican food, great like they have
Mm.
these like swirls, so great like sangarita type of frozen
Oh,
swirls and stuff. Yeah.
wow.
Uh, I'm like any coffee shop, love,
Yeah.
like with the exception of like chains and stuff, but like all New York coffee shops, I can't even think of a favorite, but yeah, good
Lovely.
questions. Yeah.
All right. But now, last but not least, who are
Mhm.
some of your heroes and why?
Oh, my first hero, my grandfather was a Holocaust survivor.
I
Um,
didn't realize that.
yeah, he was a Holocaust survivor. He passed 3 years ago, but he's the first hero that comes to mind because he like lived in the woods during his escape for a while. All of his family was killed in the Holocaust. So
Yeah.
to go from that to being who he became, like, I just feel like going through something like that, you have every reason to like want to give up. And then if you don't, like, it's so much harder to keep going, but he
Yeah.
would like all the time. So definitely a hero of mine for sure. It's gonna sound cheesy, but I'm gonna say it anyway and take the risk. I feel like anyone who can survive a traumatic experience,
Yeah. Yeah.
like they are, and then who can go on TV and talk about it, go on a podcast and talk about it, go on I don't know, like whatever, in a
Yeah.
public platform, write about it, whatever. Definitely heroes in their own right too.
Well, then we will have to do a part two,
Yes,
truly.
yes, yes,
Yes,
yes.
because
I hope.
there's still so much more that we could talk about and unpack. And like I said, from the start, like you are really someone that made me realize there are people out there like you. There are producers out there who care and truly just in pursuit change the landscape really of how I envision storytelling and I really attribute that
to you and the team, and I can't sing everyone's praises more than enough because that's just how impactful every single one of you were. So thank you for taking that chance on me and being a part of that journey. Like, I don't want to cry, but it really was very, very special. And I don't take, those moments lightly or anything. So thank you for that.
Wow. Well, I appreciate that. And I love that you care beyond, because that's going back to what I was saying before, I can't expect people to care like me, I got to be open to the fact that they won't. But you really do, and that is why I also was like, I should do the podcast, because I know I know your heart is in the right place as far as like creating the change, victim advocacy, and like creating that awareness space.
Thank you.
Thank you for that. That means really, like, truly, that means a lot, because I have like theses. A lot, because that is ultimately like what I want people to feel when they work with me, but also like when they leave a show that is super traumatizing, for them to like take away that it's like, oh, there's still people that can do the right thing in this genre, so that really is so humbling. So I appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Rachel.
Be sure to join me next week for the season finale, when I sit down with Cheryl Hunter, a trafficking survivor whose journey of healing is nothing short of inspiring. Cheryl is not only a best-selling author, publicist, writer, and speaker, but she's also shared her powerful story with major media outlets around the world. Her healing journey redefines what it means to be a survivor and highlights the importance of supporting others who have faced similar challenges. This conversation is one filled with hope, perseverance, and the transformative power of healing. An episode you won't want to miss. This is True Crime in Hollywood, a personal tale. Don't forget to like, share, and leave a review for the show. Thank you for listening, and as always, remember the victims and embrace the survivors.